So The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia. Now, this movie actually isn't any relation to the original film, and it's a completely separate story. So if you haven't seen the first movie, don't worry, you don't need to have seen it to watch this one. So this is kind of a medium budget horror movie, and apparently is very, very loosely based on a true story. Now, basically what it concerns is a small family, basically a couple and their kind of young daughter, sort of moved to this kind of sort of out of the way house in the kind of country somewhere. They got it for a cheap deal because there's no one, person's died in it years ago, and it's just kind of been left to rot ultimately. They're soon joined by the wife's kind of sister, and it turns out the females in this family basically are kind of psychic and have these sort of visions, and we kind of see this kind of prologue at the beginning where I guess the wife, the main sort of character really, is sort of having these sort of visions, and she's kind of trying to control them using drugs, and she's kind of convinced herself that basically it's kind of a mental issue rather than she's actually sort of seeing spirits. Now, suffice to say, as you'd probably expect with this kind of title, there are real ghosts on this kind of house, and that we find out that this house has historical value, and there used to be a kind of what's called a station master who lived there, who was basically a kind of guy who used to sort of hide slaves, and basically there's some nefarious goings on in the past. That's a sort of the story will reveal to you, so I won't spoil so much here. And there's lots of ghosts there, and obviously the family's in jeopardy. Now it kind of sounds a little bit like The Conjuring, I've got to say. And it kind of has that sort of same setting as well, the kind of the sort of big country house. So there are some comparisons that I think that are fair. Now this isn't quite as a well-made film as the Conjuring. Now it does have lots of ghostly effects. One of the things I was surprised about this movie is that it does actually show you quite a lot quite often. So with a lot of these sort of horror films, you'll find you'll be sort of waiting ages for the sort of supernatural stuff to happen. Not with this film. It's pretty much right from the get-go, and consistently through the whole movie you'll kind of see lots of, sort of ghostly images. And it really likes jump scares, this film. There's actually loads and loads of jump scares. So if you're not a fan of that type of movie, that type of horror film, then you may be slightly want to avoid in this one. But I have to say, I think they maybe went for a kind of flashier approach rather than a kind of spooky approach, because I have to say it kind of loses some of its effectiveness as you kind of watch the film. And I think that's where a film like, for example, The Conjuring really succeeds, while this one sort of maybe doesn't do quite as well, because it's not a big budget film and the effects aren't terrible, but there are some kind of CGI-ishness to it, if that makes sense. But because you're sort of seeing this stuff so often, it really does kind of almost sort of take away some of the sort of mystery. And a lot of the kind of the effects are sort of video effects and sort of editing with sort of sound effects, which just don't feel particularly kind of scary after the sort of 10th time that they've done it. So, you know, unfortunately, I think it does lose some of its bite. It's certainly not a bad film. You've got Katee Sackhoff here, who's kind of like one of these sort of geek sort of icon characters, and she plays Joyce, who is the sort of the sister of the main character. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, but it's just kind of, it's interesting because her and her sister have kind of a different opposing views in regards to their, one sort of sees their sort of powers as a gift, the other sort of sees it as more of a curse almost. So it's kind of interesting to have that sort of differing point of views. I have to say the standout actor here was actually the little girl, who's like a really sweet looking girl, and you know, really sort of sells it, I have to say. I thought she was the kind of the best actress here. I got to say the husband I thought was a little bland. He kind of just really is a bit of a non-character, doesn't really do much in the film either. So, but overall, it was actually a fairly solid film. It was, you know, it was kind of well made. It's fairly glossy looking. So if you don't really like these sort of really sort of cheap, grubby looking films that, you know, just look low budget, get a good sense of momentum with this film. So I have to say it's probably an above average sort of B-movie horror film. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment. I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.